Oh my goodness gracious me. How annoying. Gremlins. Oh, you can see my Batman trousers down there. Look at that. Move them. Don't you see my Batman trousers? There we go. Good evening. How many have we got? We got 3 people watching tonight. Not so many as last time. Maybe it's a week away. I told you, Reese, didn't I? I told you I was worried that people would forget about me. Yeah, so I'm back. Quick shout out to Reese. I do this at the top of every show. If you are a 3rd tier and a 2nd tier, I think, patron, you get a shout out. So thank you, Reese, for being a patron. As with all of my shows, if you make my phone ding by becoming a patron, you'll get a shout out just for being there anyway. So there we go. And you also get your name added to. There it goes, along the bottom there. No, it goes that way. There we go. You'll get your name added to that. So, yes. Hello, welcome. I'm back after my holiday. Don't ask how it went. The less we talk about that, the better. It wasn't that bad, but it was a nightmare. The people that were there. So, yeah, we're going to crack on with this tonight. But I do have something. If you eagle-eyed viewers, you'll notice that I've changed my hashtag up the top here. Now, normally, if ever you want to talk about me, it's just B of OPS. But I decided I want to try something new tonight, and if you want to follow along, we've got B of OPS Live, which you can use while I'm live, okay? So you can, a little bit of audience participation, alright? If you want to show me something that you're working on, or while we're chatting away and I'm working on this and you're sitting there at home painting away, use B of OPS, and you can use that hashtag, and you can, if you tag me in any of the social media platforms I use, Facebook, Instagram, I'm on Twitter as well, you could tag me in something, hashtag it B of OPS Live, and we can have a look. I'll see if I can bring it up on the screen as well somehow. We'll have to figure out how it all works, and with only a few people watching, it wouldn't be too difficult to try that. Alright, so if you want to show me anything you're working on while we're working along here, that's that. Use that hashtag B of OPS Live, and tag my page as well, so it'll ping my phone. If you just hashtag it, it won't really work very well. So there's that. So if you want to try that away, then feel free. And also, we got this ready to go. Now, there's not a lot changed since last time you were here, apart from I've used a bit of green stuff, if you remember, trying to fill out the gaps between the Magna Grapple onto the resin chaplain body. So there's a bit of green stuff. My green stuffing leaves a lot to be desired, so we won't go into that. And the thing's primed. I was going to base coat it with an airbrush as well, which I can't do when I'm live, but yeah, I decided what I'll do is I'll do it all with the brush, and then you can actually watch it. But what I will say is, this won't take too many weeks to get this done. I think today we should have the metals done and the blacks, hopefully. Maybe some more stuff. We'll see how it goes. But it won't be too bad. Too many weeks to get this finished. So, as of today, for now we got Reese and Tim watching. Throw some ideas out there about what you want me to do as the next project that you'll see on a Thursday. Anything you want, you can shout out there, and it will go in my list to be shortlisted. Now here's the thing, and I keep talking about Patreon. Here's the thing, with YouTube you get to throw your ideas out there. I then go away and I will then shortlist those ideas, and my Patreons will get to decide what the next project will be once I've shortlisted the list. Alright, so you can say absolutely anything on YouTube. I'll then decide what's viable, what's far too expensive, because if you start throwing out £300 models, it's not going to happen. But yeah, so you can throw some ideas out there that you want to see what we do next. Otherwise, what will end up happening is on these shows I'll end up just doing my hobby stuff, and it'll just be Blood Angels, Blood Angels, Blood Angels. And I'm sure you don't all just want to watch Blood Angels all the time. You want to see me do some interesting stuff. So what do you find interesting, basically? So throw them in the comments while we go along. I think that's all of my that I wanted to do. A bit of verbal diarrhea there. I wanted to get all that out there and get out there just before I get started on this. So that's that. So welcome to the show. We'll get cracking on with this, and yeah, chat in the comments. Hello, how are you? What you working on? And yeah, let's get on, shall we? Let's just crack on. All right. So yeah, make my phone ping while you're at it. It'll be lovely. A Mark 7 lieutenant. Mark 7, as in oldie worldy Marines. What chapter? I wasn't ready today. I haven't got my what's it open at all, my palette. So what we're going to get cracking on, we're going to start with the metallics. Now what I'm going to do is, you may have had a look, you may see that I've glued the arms on, and what I'm going to do, I only lightly tack them on, so I'm going to pull them off. That was just so that I could prime them. You can see that there's actually a ring of bare plastic. It's not really necessary, but if I leave that bare, when I use the super glue, it's super glue onto plastic and resin, because that way hasn't got any paint on it either. And then that will go. What's it? Tagged you on Instagram. Let's have a look at what you're working on. Let's have a gander here. Has my Instagram and somebody? Yeah, you mentioned me in a comment, Tim. We got some orc arms. Lovely. I did try orcs at one point. I was going to do orcs. Your skin is fantastic. That skin is fantastic. That's really brilliant. I do like that. I'll tell you what I'll do is I will see if I can bring up those pictures at some point. I don't think I can save. Oh yes, I can save it. There we go. So I can save that picture and I can bring that up at some point during the show. Let's have a gander. What am I trying to do? Save that. There we go. Tim NR 2.0. I'll make sure that you've got your. I'll put a little thing on there while I'm so that you can see it's your Instagram. But they're very nice. I really do like that skin. Right. So we'll try and get your picture. I'll figure out how I'm going to do that and still give you a decent show at the same time. It's brilliant. I'll be multitasking the whole way through this show. Be fantastic. Right, so it's really difficult. Let's have a gander. Let's see if we can get this angle into a good place. Where do we want to put this? There we go, something like that. So all I'm going to do for the first part of this show is I'm going to slap a bunch of lead belcher all over this model. One of the things, I was watching a video, I've watched it a few times actually, well, a couple of times, is it Adam Savage? You know Adam Savage from Mythbusters? He's doing a YouTube thing called Tested these days, where he does some stuff on there. And what he does is he does one-day builds, and he did have a he had the guy who played the chief on Battlestar Galactica on his show at one point. I think it was a couple of years ago now. But there's a little bit of tidbit of information that he said in passing while he was doing it. Is when you're painting something, you paint it in the order in which you get dressed. For argument's sake, if you're painting a model. And the idea being is that you're painting from the inside out. And I've always remembered that since I watched that model. Because essentially I do that with every single model. So for this one, I'm really messily throwing lead belcher on there. Because, essentially, the underwear of this model is metallics. It's lead belcher. So I could be as messy as I want. Just throwing the lead belcher on there. You don't have to be neat and tidy. And then as you get higher and higher and higher with the more and more detailed stuff, you know, the stuff that's further and further on the outside, is you get more and more careful with. Tested is fantastic. Yes, it is. It's brilliant. I catch some of it occasionally. I wouldn't necessarily say I watch it religiously. But I've seen a couple of them, and I do find them quite interesting, especially whatever he's doing, whatever Adam Savage is doing. I'm not particularly fond of the The American Asian guy. I don't know his name. Because he tends to be on that, and he tends to do so like a lot of modelling stuff. I think they were doing some modelling with I don't know any of their names, but they're doing some like dystopian underwater models. That was quite cool, and they were doing some various painting and stuff. And what I really don't like about Tested is he doesn't seem to know anything that what he's doing. Now he's either has absolutely no idea how to paint miniatures, or he's just asking really stupid questions to be answered in a way that, I don't know, it's just really weird. He asks questions that you really don't need to answer questions for, or he asks them in such a way that demands a really simplistic explanation. I don't know. I find it really difficult to watch him. But there's a bearded bloke on there, he's quite cool. So we've had a couple of, you've had a couple of, what did we say? You said a Mark 7 Lieutenant, a Plague Marine. Grant has a background in robotics. I need to bring this on. I'm trying to read that on my tiny little screen. Let me read that. Grant has a background in robotics. He used to build battle robots. I don't think it's not Grant. I don't think it's Grant that watched it now and again. Saw a model from Chappie. That was cool. I don't actually know what Chappie is, but I don't think it's Grant. I think Grant. Yeah, Grant is he did the White Rabbit project, didn't he, with the other two from Mythbusters. But it's not him from Mythbusters. I honestly I couldn't tell you his name. I don't really pay attention to their names. Not from Tested anyway. But I do like watching it every so often, especially when it came up. It came up with a recommended video to watch Underwater Dystopian Cityscapes or something. I think it was the video it was called, and they were fantastic. I mean, they were tiny little resin skylines. Apparently, they're big in Japan, where they put them on the desk or something. Just cities. Excuse me. And they turned them into really awesome kind of underwater things with pouring some resin onto them. I thought they were fantastic. They were brilliant. Oh, excuse me. I must apologise if I start coughing a lot. I think I got hay fever really badly this year. And it's really hot today as well. I'm sweltering. Right, I don't know what colour I'm going to do. Oops, I'm going to drop it now. I'm not quite sure what colour I'm going to do this bit. I think I might do it in bone, but just in case I don't, I'm going to throw some lead belcher down there. So as you can see, I'm just being really rough with this bobby. I mean, I'm using a really old brush, throwing the metallics in there, really rubbing it in circles as well. Little trick there is while I'm going into these deep recesses, I'm not being careful. I'm not trying to get a really even coat. I'm just trying to get coverage. Jab the brush in and go in little tiny concentric circles, and the brush will just really work its way into every little nook and cranny without really paying attention. I'm not even paying attention to what I've been doing. I've been reading you in the comments, and you know, really giving it a nice even coat. And by going in circles like this and really moving the paint around, you'll find that not only does it go on in everywhere, but it also goes on really smooth because you've been moving it all around. And that's it. That's the metallics done. Now these will be metallic on the top. Let's try if we can get the Magna Grapple. They will be metallic, but like I was just saying when I started about going from the underwear out, I need to be able to get into the little thing under here. Once there's some colour on it, you should be able to see it. The altar type thing, that'll be gold. and I can't paint that gold without getting a bunch of gold all over the Magna Grapple, so I'm going to have to come back to the Magna Grapple towards the end of the paint job. But other than that, we have got paint absolutely everywhere on the base, mostly. I think I missed a little bit down in the corner here. I think this might be a bit of a miss of a green stuff jobby there, so we'll just throw some paint in the crevice down there. Make sure that we're nice and covered. And we'll be doing a load of black all over that at some point in a minute. So we can put that to one side and we'll get on with the arms. Something else I won't do is I won't be trying not to touch. You know, a lot of people, they don't like getting their fingerprints all over stuff, and they'll try not to touch their models while they're painting. Because it's a vehicle, I actually kind of want the paint to come peeling off in some places. It gives you a much more natural guideline as to where to put chipping if you're manhandling the model, because you tend to manhandle it around corners and in random places because of however you need to hold it. So it'll give you a nice random guideline where to chip your model. So that is why I will manhandle me miniature, ironically with the hope that I'll actually spoil the paintwork. Now if it was a person, if it was you know, a figure, a model, yeah, a person, for want of a better word, I'd put it in a holder, and I would attempt not to hold it, because I don't tend to chip the weathering. I don't tend to chip the armor and stuff that I've done on those models. I tend to just dust them up when I'm weathering them. So I do tend to keep my fingers off, but with vehicles I'll manhandle it. You hear what? I hear your dread has a grav allergy. Yes, he did get graved to death. Yes, he did. Thank you, Reese, for reminding me about that. But then, having said that, both this guy, Captain Slam, and a squad of Sanguinary Guard also took on head-to-head 2 of your Armigers and won. So it's not all bad. And also they failed to kill the bird that was bringing them in. So I'm gonna call a win on that one. They did exactly what they needed to do. Now, why is... Well, I did notice that my phone isn't actually pinging me. For some reason, I realised that you had to actually tell me that you tagged me, Tim. I'm confused as to why my phone isn't shouting at me when I get my notifications. I'm not quite sure why. I'm going to have to look into that for the next show, because I don't want to have to keep stopping what I'm doing just to check to see if I've been tagged in anything. So we're almost finished with the metallics on this. We're getting on to washing it, and hopefully I'll be able to kind of string together my painting. I really don't want to get to a point where I'm waiting for things to dry. 1 of 3 Armigers lived, and how many for them the bird? Oh, the bird didn't take out any of your Armigers, but it certainly dropped off the Armiger's downfall. Happy with my wet palette? Yes, I am happy with the wet palette. It's doing pretty much exactly what it says on the tin. I'm practicing using some wet water in my wet palette at the moment, and I know that sounds a bit of an odd thing to say. If you don't know what wet water is, it's essentially it's water with flow improver in it. You use it when you're making casts of things. You can pre-wet your molds with wet water, and it helps your water. It helps the mold. It helps the plaster fill the mold better. But I know that Reese, rather than using, Reese doesn't use a wet palette. She just uses a regular palette. And you thin your paints with flow improver, don't you, Reese? Which is why you get those fantastically smooth panels on your knights, and they are genuinely, enviably smooth. So I'm trying out in this wet palette. I am trying to see whether using wet water in my wet palette will help with thinning the paint down to be much more flowy. That's not even a word, but I'm gonna go with it. I've been trying it, and I think I might stop trying it because it works almost too well. I think just plain water in the wet palette would be good. But on the whole, it's from Red Grass Games, and if you do want to try it, I'm quite happy with it, and it does work better than anything I've tried making myself. And I know there are plenty of people all over the internet. If you tell them that you've spent money on a wet palette, they call you an idiot for spending money on a wet palette, where you can do the same thing with Tupperware, kitchen roll and grease-proof paper, which I've tried and I couldn't get it to work. But this one from Redgrass, yeah, it does work. It's not necessarily what I don't want to put it in a downfall. It's not necessarily as perfect as they would like you to say. Wait, what did Maurice use? Maurice uses, and I hope Reese doesn't mind me telling you this, Flow Improver. This is from any craft score. It's from Winsor & Newton, and anything with the name Winsor & Newton on for artistry stuff is brilliant. But it's called Flow Improver, and essentially what this is, it breaks the surface tension of water. So the best to explain this is if you get a droplet of water, and put it on a work surface, a perfectly flat surface, the water will stand up. And if you try and spread that water around, the water will spread, but then it will bead itself back up again into droplets, because the surface tension pulls the water back into a droplet. This stuff, what it will do is, when you if you add this stuff to a droplet of water, you can spread the water around and it will stay flat. Okay, because it breaks the surface tension. It doesn't try and pull itself back into a round droplet, which is what water likes to do. And it's why you can get some really fantastically smooth surfaces, because essentially it's got no pull on it. It's got no surface tension whatsoever, which is brilliant. So yeah, I mean, I tried to put some of that into my wet palette, because when you're using a wet palette, you don't have to thin your paint, because the water coming up from the sponge thins the paint for you. And I thought, well, maybe if I add a bit of flow improver to the water that I'm using to thin my paint, it's kind of adding, a bit of less surface tension. Unfortunately, it kind of works a bit too well, and so if I can move my palette just sits there, not doing anything, and you can see that the paint is spreading all around the wet palette. And after a few minutes, that's it. The reason why it stops brush marks is because there's no surface tension. So when you make a brush stroke through it, the water, if you imagine the paint trying to stand up from the bristles, it will then collapse itself and then spread out, and that's exactly why it doesn't have brush marks, and it's why you do have some such fantastically smooth surfaces, especially when you're doing your large titans and everything. You did that all by hand, didn't you? Which is fantastic work. And it's because it's got no surface tension, and that's essentially was what happening inside my stuff. Yeah, you see, this is the stuff you need to know. Yeah, exactly. So essentially what's happening in my palette is because the flow improver is mixing in with the paint that is in the water, it's breaking the surface tension of my paint and starting to spread around. Now, is this a good thing? I suppose it is a kind of a good thing, especially if I don't need many colours on my palette. But if I started to add more and more colours to the palette, I could start having an issue, and I'd end up getting through so much paper, it's a bit ridiculous. So it's kind of, it's a swings and roundabouts issue, but yes, it is pretty cool. What was that that's shouting out? Oh no, Facebook is telling me to do, oh no, Facebook is telling me to boost a post earlier. So yeah, on the whole, this wet palette is much better than any Tupperware thing I've ever done. It's got some, it's got a sponge rather than it's a sponge rather than paper. The paper is just pretty much, it's just greaseproof paper. Excuse me, I need to cough. Yeah, excuse me. Right. Yeah, so it's sponge rather than tissue paper, which is brilliant. I mean, I've had some, it looks like I've had some paint leak over there, which is a bit of a pain in the bum. I'm going to have to clean this out now. The paper is fairly standard paper on it, and the lid, when it comes to Redgrass, they did say that they had this rubber seal, and so essentially once you put this on, it's kind of airtight and it's fantastically brilliant. Yes, it is good, and I had this closed. Well, I took it away with me for a week, and I only managed to paint a couple of times during that week, and it was okay. But you know, the lid's pretty good. It does keep it cool, but it's not as perfect as what Redgrass said it was going to be. But on the whole, it's fantastic. It is for me, it is worth the money. For Tim, I use a drop of water that's 90% water and 10% flow improver, and then add some drops to my palette. Takes a little practice to get the amount right to mix ratio. How is the mixing? 1 to 1. If you're talking, Tim, if you're talking about mixing, yeah, so what Reese says is if you're mixing this flow improver, it does say on the bottle, it is, you don't mix any more than 10% flow improver to water. And I use distilled water. You can use tap water, it's perfectly fine. But another little tip for you, if you're using, if you're going to have water sat around for any length of time, use distilled or deionized water. I use deionized water in my palette because deionized water doesn't go off because there's nothing in it to go off. It is literally H2 and O. Well, it's 2 H's and 1 O. Literally, it's all it is. It's just plain water. There's no minerals or anything in it that actually goes off when water's sitting around for a long time. So you can have, I could have water sat in here for a long, long time, and if there's any bad smells coming off of it, it's from the paint and not from the water itself. And the same with same with things like flow improver and all sorts of things. Use deionized water, and you can get the stuff. I get mine from Tesco's, and I get 2.5 litres for £1. It lasts me ages. Yeah, and if you're mixing your flow improver with your paint, it genuinely does just come down to practice. And Reese has got it down to a fine art getting your paint mix right. Just look at that Titan that she did. Cool. No, I'm not going to be doing a Titan on this show anytime soon. Right, I've been waffling, I haven't been getting anything done. Series 7 has indeed. Yeah, Series 7 brushes, they have been absolutely amazing. I remember when I first picked up a Series 7 brush. And the very first thing I said is, oh, that's what flow means. I had never had paint flow from the tip of my paintbrush so perfectly than a Series 7 brush. It's ridiculous. Patreon, is this via PayPal? Yes, Patreon, you do pay via PayPal. It's in US dollars. You have to walk the dog. Be right back. Yeah, has it cooled down a bit now? Oh, man. Right. I think this should be dry by now, isn't it? I can get that. Yeah, we can get some wash on this bad boy now. And then hopefully we can get some... I'll either have a massive talk about something else, or I'll be able to move on to something else. So we're going to throw some Known oil down on this. Get some lovely oily residue looking stuff all over this. Stop punching the camera, Will. I'll make all the viewers sick. So I do it again. Right, let's throw some oil down on this thing. Oh. Too hot to paint tonight. Well, I have a fan right behind me tonight. And I have some very loyal viewers, so I couldn't let you down tonight. Not after having last week off. I figured to myself I better make the effort. We'll start seeing some colour laid down on this boy. It's going to look great, I think, when we're done. I've got some plans for it coming up. I don't think it will happen tonight, but later on. Oh, I'll go cough again. Oh dear. I got some plans to try and make this thing stand out from being, you know, because I'm worried when I'm painting this down is that it's just going to look like a Chaplain Dread with Furioso arms. So I've got to try and figure out how to make it look Blood Angel-y for a start, which shouldn't be too difficult with the Furioso arms. But not only make it look Blood Angel-y, but also turn it into a Deathcompany Dread, which is something entirely different altogether. So we'll see how it turns out. I do have some plans. So we're working on this. It's a bit of a slow feed tonight. I remember before I went away, we were up to, what, 8 viewers? Whoops. Punching the camera again. We were up to 8 viewers. I don't know what happened tonight. But then perhaps, Reese, you'll just turn around and say I told you so, because I haven't actually been plugging the feed very much this week, have I? It was once on Monday and then once today. I think I might have done it on Wednesday. I might have done it yesterday. But I haven't plugged it like every day, have I? So it might be why nobody's watching. I also worry whether, you know, having that week off, I'd only just about started to become regular before my week off, so that might have an issue, but I'm sure that I can build it back up again as long as I keep plugging it and getting people to shout out. So there's that. That's the known oil. Done. Right. Now I made a right mess doing that. Oh, back to Batman pants again. How's that happening? Did I move the camera? I've moved the camera, haven't I? That's what's going on. There we go. Right, so I want to get a more industrial look onto that. Where are we looking here? So we're just going to wait for that. Let's get rid of some of these pools of... Get rid of some of those pools that are not even going to be silver by the time we're finished. Get rid of some of that. So what we're going to do now... Oh, I've got a river of this stuff running down here. Damn. So, what we're going to do now is get some... No, not that. That one. Earthshade. Get some earthshade on this thing. We start adding this into some of the more industrial areas, like these cables up the top there, these stacks here. Just slobber some Agrax Earthshade on those. And this is before the known oil is dry as well. I end up contaminating me Agrax with some known oil that I've picked up, but it's not going to be too much of a bother. I might just go out and get another Agrax Earthshade to keep clean. So some of these more industrial parts of the model, just throw in a few dollops of Agrax Earthshade just to change up some of the colouring. Down there. I like to think of this this as it's like you've got your known oil, which is literally your oil, and the whole thing would be fairly well oiled. But this is also the grimy bit. Alright, Race, I'll catch you later. You get out of the heat and feel better, yeah? I'm going to throw some of this, carry on throwing some of this Agrax around here. I like to think that the Agrax is, yeah, like I said, it's more the grimy bits. See, the whole thing is covered in oil because the whole thing needs to be oily. You throw on a bit of Agrax Earthshade for a bit of grime that gets stuck into the oil. And so, you know, it gives you, if you look around here, you've got some of the shiny stuff, but then you've also got some of the slightly more grimy areas. It just adds a little bit of detail for literally next to no work at all. I mean, it literally doesn't take anything to throw some known oil on the model and then just pick out sort of one or two areas in Agrax Earthshade, especially down here where these pistons and stuff are. We'll just throw some Agrax Earthshade in there just to change it up from some of the other areas. So around here I won't, around here, which is just the kind of, you know, I don't know what that is, but this is grimy, it's going to get clogged up with some dirt and stuff. Just throw some Agrax Earthshade in there and a little bit down there. There's still a big puddle of known oil in there that hasn't washed, dried. That's not a problem. Agrax and known, they work really well together. So it's not too much of a bother to get them mixed up. Not really. There we go. Right. we gotta do now? We've done that. We kind of need to wait for the wash to dry now. But what I might be able to do is I should be able to pick out some of the black areas. Because theoretically the black will overpower any of the wash colour that's nearby. So I'll just pop some wash black in the palette, and now we start painting some of this stuff. Now I'm not completely finished with the metallics yet. I do have a dry brush to go, but we should be able to avoid too much interaction between the black and the metallics, so we'll be alright there. Once the wash is dry, we'll throw the metallic dry brush over it anyway, which is why I'm starting further down here, because most of the dry brushing is kind of in this area here. So I'll try and avoid painting the back panels, and I'll just try and do the stuff at the front that's out of the way of most of the dry brushing, and that way I'm not gonna ruin the black paint straight after putting it on. Like I said, painting like this, I mean, usually I'd have 2 or 3 projects on the go, and when I've got this to this stage trying to wait for some wash to dry, I'll have moved on to something else. Wait until I'm waiting for something to dry there, and then come back to this. But because this is what this show's all about, is watching this model come from start to finish, then I kind of need to try and see if I can juggle painting everything all at once, and that will mean that sometimes I'm kind of tripping over myself. So we're getting that bit done. Now as the black picks up some wash, it does thin the paint a bit, so the black is going on a bit thin, so we'll have to come back and do a couple of passes on that, which isn't a problem, because as we all know, 2 thin coats is better than 1 thick one, so we will have to come back over it again in the future. For now, we're just adding just block out some colours, and then the more we block out these colours, the better this thing will come together. One thing I have noticed when you're painting miniatures as well is that as you kind of have to trust yourself when you're painting, because most of the time you're looking at a model and it looks absolutely pants, and it does from start to finish. It looks absolutely rubbish until you've finished, and then just as you finish, you look at it and all of it comes back together again. You kind of, as you're going along, you're just like, I don't know, is that right? It looks like there's too much of this colour, and it looks really untidy. And I think the reason for that is that you kind of can't separate yourself from seeing the stuff that you haven't done, or those tiny little details, those spot colours that you put in. So for argument's sake, the gold that will go on this will break up a lot of the black, and as I'm starting here, it might start looking like there's a lot of black on it. It doesn't look very great, because it just looks like a massive just a mass of black paint. And as you get further and further along and you start breaking those big block colours up, you start realising that it starts slowly coming together. It looks a little bit better, but it's not until you finish, you step back and you go, ah, now I see what I was heading for the whole time. And then it all comes together right at the end, and you think, ah, right. You realise that you're worrying for no reason, because it does kind of look okay once you manage to get everything together. So we're just throwing on some black paint here. Of course, this will be a Deathcompany dreadnought after all. Well, even if it was a chaplain dreadnought, it would be black, wouldn't it? And we're starting heading into the territory where my black is going to start getting caught by my metallic dry brush. We will try and just be as gentle as possible when it comes to dry brushing around the black. But again, you know, a little bit of a rough, bit of a catching of a few spots. It'll be natural. It'll all be on the edges. It'll be like a natural kind of chipping. You know, I can come in later and I can chip the areas that I've gone off of camera, haven't I? Let's move that a little bit. There we go. Yeah, where I've caught the black and it doesn't look, it looks a bit rough or untidy, you can come in with a sponge and just chip it. I've said before, you know, those videos, I have done a video specifically on covering up mistakes on vehicles. You can find that on the channel. We're just throwing the black paint around here. I'm not going to go crazy with trying to edge highlight this and all sorts of stuff like that. I'm probably literally just going to dry brush the black. Yeah, we don't need to go crazy with this. It's going to look pretty good as it is, I think. So I don't need to spend hours and hours and hours edge highlighting everything. And like I said, if you do have any ideas about what I should go on to next, you know, throw them in the comments. What have we had? We've had a Mark 7 Blood Angels Lieutenant. What else did we have? I've forgotten now. I'll have to go through the comments. There's a Plague Marine. I do have some models lying around here that I could be doing, and I might be ordering some more models in soon, so they'll probably be on the list. If you got any ideas, you know, throw them in the comments. And like I said, my patrons will get to decide what the final model will be that will be painted, or set of models. It could be a whole unit. We'll see what happens. just finished the black on the main body. Just a few more details I'll pick out. The wash hasn't quite dried yet, so I can't quite go around with the dry brush of the blacks. Can't really do that until it's finished drying. Otherwise I'll end up, the dry brush, it really does need to be dry, otherwise you'll end up getting your dry paint wet, and then instead of dry brushing and catching out edges, it just starts smudging and making a right mess of everything. I'm going to be able to get into there. That's done. Oh, I didn't do the back edge of this. Oh. Run the paintbrush along the edge of the inside here. Gives us a nice little change from the metallic to the black. Gives you a viewpoint as to what was, you know, that this is a plate that's added to the front of the chassis rather than it just being kind of all metallic. You kind of, when you're painting away, you can kind of just give yourself your own story as to how these things are built. I mean, if you know exactly how they're built, then that's great, but I'm not 100% sure how these things come together. So I'm just looking around, I'm thinking, right, so this back would be black because the front plate is a separate piece that is attached after the body is put together. So it might be, while it's in the manufactorum, it'll be sprayed before adding to the front. I mean, I know technically that the Blood Angels Deathcompany, they're painted black after they're built, when they fall to the Black Rage, but yeah, I'll take a few liberties with what I'm doing. Alright, what did you miss, Tim? Welcome back. You haven't missed a lot. I've just been going around with the black. I think you left as I was putting the Nuln Oil wash on, and I went around and I just picked out a few details with an Agrax wash as well before the Nuln Oil was dry, so it just kind of blends together. It gives you a few variations in the metallics. Just gives you something a little bit different. You can see it specifically down here. We got an Agrax wash here with the Nuln Oil. This is just Nuln Oil here, and then around here there's a bit more Agrax as well. It just gives you, breaks up the monotony of metallics that are on the back here. And we're just going around with the black paint. Unfortunately, Reese had to go off. The heat is kind of getting to her over here in lovely sunny England so far. We've had it's kind of looks like summer's going the same way that winter did. Every time we think summer's over, it comes back and goes. And one more thing. Had a heat wave. It finally broke. Almost had a hose bike ban in some parts, I hear. Then the rains came, and then summer decided it wanted another crack at us. Oh, you will have to have a look at what you missed. Yeah, Agrax and Nuln Oil is fantastic. Basically, to give you the, I mean, if you go back and watch it, you'll see. I'll talk about it as I'm doing it. But on the whole, I like to think whenever I'm painting metallics, Nylon oil, I like to think, is literally oil, and in the 41st millennium, literally everything is covered in the stuff, just to kind of keep it working and stuff. But then I like to look at Agrax earthshade as the grime and the bits of sand and grit that gets caught up in oil as parts are moving. And so what it does is it just, adds you that little bit of grime that you might find catching in some of the recesses in the metallics, and in the working parts. As it starts moving, it'll pick up some grit and start working it into the moving parts of the machinery. It does. It gives you a really nice change of colour. And if you really wanted to get into it and really wanted to get kind of technical with it, you could start mixing in all sorts of different shades as you're painting your metallics, just to change it up in bits and pieces. You did it, yeah. I mean, you can do it once the nylon oil's dry, and in some ways it protects your Agrax earthshade from getting contaminated with nylon oil. But I was also saying while I was doing this, you don't really want me sitting here just waiting for wash to dry before I move on. I also haven't dry brushed the metallics yet to pick out the edges yet, which will end up getting caught into the blacks that I've just finished painting. But we'll figure those out, and we'll catch those and sort them out as we go along. We'll cover up some of our mistakes as per my chipping video. But as it is, we're going to crack on, and we're just going to keep moving forward with this. So the black on the body is done, and we're going to move forward onto the... I mean, can we see on here? You can see the lights are quite bright. I think you might be able to see it a bit better on the other side. Can we see some of those? No, it's not very. It doesn't show up very well. But there's a bit of Agrax wash in the inside here, as opposed to the rest of the metallics. They're just plain and simple. It doesn't show up very well on the camera. And all we're going to do now is I'm going to do some, I'm going to paint the black, and we'll go back. Hopefully the wash will be dry on all the metallics, and then we can give the metallics a dry brush as well. And then we'll see what the time is. I really don't think this will be taking many weeks to get this done. The way I'm painting this is I'm not going to be painting this to a crazy standard. I won't be edge highlighting everything. It will have a dry brush, and I think for the first project, live project, I think that's probably the way to go. I'm not going to spend weeks and weeks and weeks painting this thing to a competition standard. I think that would probably get quite boring, especially when I haven't got many people watching. And to be honest with you, I'm not even that good. I certainly don't think I am. I couldn't send my models into I wouldn't dream of putting my models into a Golden Demon competition or anything as such like that. I think I could safely say I was at a local competition standard at the moment with my painting. Excuse me. So we're just throwing the black down. Try and be careful with the metallics. We don't want to start throwing black all over the metallics, because that would start looking a bit odd. So you see, when I was doing the metallics, or more to the point I should say the lead belcher, because it's pretty much the only metallics I've done so far. I was just throwing the paint down, just ramming it into the model, just getting it on there. Whereas now I'm kind of being a bit more careful. If I start throwing the black all over the place, we're going to start having some problems. So you got to be a bit more careful. I'm still kind of painting over details and stuff because we can pick those out later. And my paint's thin enough, I'm not going to lose detail, which is fine. We can deal with that later. Let's go back over that. It was a bit thin. Am I right in thinking, Tim, you were asking about Patreon before you left to walk the dog? Would you like me to run through what Patreon is for you? Meanwhile, I'll carry on popping the black down. How far do we want to go up those claws? I don't know. I think I've got an idea for those actually. I'm going to see if that works. So we'll leave the claws clear. We'll just do the black around here. You think you know what it is? Alright, fair enough. I mean, it should be fairly... I mean, if you head over to Patreon, I mean, I've got a link in the description. If you head on over there and you want to have a... Just have a look around if you want. And then if you've got any questions, you can always message me. Either on Instagram or head over to my Facebook page as well. I'm more than happy to answer questions. Especially if anything's not clear. I mean, at the end of the day, we are talking money. That is talking money. So the last thing I want is anybody to get kind of miscommunication and then feeling a bit left out or whatever. But one thing I would like it to have said on the page, which it doesn't, it is in US dollars. $1 for Patreon after fees and taxes. I think it actually charges you $1.20 a month per dollar. I think it does for me. I was a Patreon for other people, and $1 equates to $1.20 after they've done their charges, which in English pounds is 98 pence. You don't have a credit card. It is done, but you can do it by PayPal. In fact, that's the way that I was a Patreon for some other people. You do link your PayPal with it. And $1 equates a $1 Patreon pledge equates to about 98 pence or something a month. Which is pretty good, I think. It's certainly it's a nice way. I mean, it certainly is when you start getting, as an artist and you've got a large audience. I've seen some artists on there and some YouTubers and stuff. I mean, they can live off of their Patreon pledges, and you'll find that most of the Patreons that they have are only like $1 a month. You have euros. Oh, right, fair enough. I don't know what the exchange rate for euros would be either. But I do notice a lot of the Patreons, you find that they've got like 14,000 Patreons. You know, and most of them are pledging $1 a month. You know, and when you've got that many people following you, I mean, it would be nice to get to that. You think all of those people, they're just pledging $1 just for an appreciation which is very much appreciated. But it all adds up, even even that small amount per person, and it just helps your artists just carry on doing what they're doing. And for me myself, I mean, I'm quite worried about what I offer people. I do want to make sure that people feel that they're getting their money's worth, and they're not feeling like they're getting the short end of the deal, as it were. Really is. So I do kind of want to grow it to something that people can really feel like they've got an impact with. PayPal works with a credit card. No, PayPal not necessarily a credit card. Debit cards, any bank account. It is all electronic. There's bank account, debit card. That's how PayPal works. I haven't really looked into many other forms of payment, to be honest, so I don't know of any others. So we're almost done with the black. I've just got this arm left to do, and then we'll get some of the highlighting done onto the metallics. I can't believe it's 20 to 8 already. Normally I'm thinking about signing off in about 20 minutes or so, but I'm doing quite well with this. And you're still with me, Tim, so we'll take a look at that. Was planning on supporting. Well, thank you very much for even considering it. But the credit card holds you back. That's fair enough. I mean, have a look at it. Have a look around. You can. I think they've got an FAQ on there as well. I know it's definitely not credit card only. Debit card and bank accounts and so on and so forth linked to PayPal or with them. I've no idea. I mean, I do everything via PayPal. But it's kind enough of you to even consider it. So, but yeah, have a look at the page, have a look at Patreon and how they work, and see if it's for you. If it's not, then it's no biggie. I'll still be here next week. Now hopefully the noise isn't going to start getting too high. My wife's just walked back from my daughters who have just been to their majorettes. I'll all of a sudden have a bunch of people all in here. Getting towards the end of the black here. You can still see that I'm not being particularly careful. I am trying not to get onto the metallics, but there are other areas that, that I'm just painting over and to hell with it. And that's because I haven't painted that bit yet. And if I haven't painted it, I don't have to be careful with it, because it means I'm about to paint over it at a later stage. That's the biggest thing you need to think about when you're painting, is in which order you paint things in. Because the last thing you want to be doing is, when you're painting a model, you don't want to have to be careful all the time. Because if you have to be careful all the time, it's going to take you forever to paint. Whereas if you can spend ages and ages and ages just rushing your way through it, just throwing colour at the model, you're going to get your model done reasonably quickly. And then all you've got to do is, towards the end, just take your time over a few different areas, and you're going to have yourself a nice looking model. Alright, so we got the blacks done. The washers should pretty much be done by now, so we can pick ourselves out a nice dry brush, which I'm actually going to use quite a small dry brush compared to something I might normally use. And find the Necron compound, because let's face it, who wants to sit there edge highlighting the back end of a dreadnought? So get some paint on there, rub it off, and then just run along the tops there. I mean, the camera doesn't really pick up a lot, and I'll tell you what I'm going to try and do is, if I try and get the I'm going to see if I can get the autofocus will work, because I think one of the biggest problems we've got at the minute is some things I'm working really close with and some things I'm not. I think hopefully, yeah, it's not working very well. So what I'm going to do, oops, no, cancel that, is I want to input, let's get the camera focus. I'll turn off the autofocus, and I will put the focus there we go. Okay, so we'll apply that, there we go. Right, so that's where I need to work. Everything needs to be working about that far away from the camera. Get some highlighting down in there, and I'm not really trying to figure out how I want to highlight the model. I'm just literally just throwing the Necron compound, and I'm barely touching it, just catching it, just letting the Necron compound just run across the metallics and just let it stay where it wants to stay. You know, it's not a particularly clean, well looked after, well, it is a looked after vehicle, but it's not particularly clean. It's quite a rugged one, so you know, there are going to be bits that are worn bare that you wouldn't normally presume would be worn bare, and there are bits that are going to be grubby that you would assume would not be grubby. So we're just literally just rubbing the compound all over it, just letting it lay wherever it wants to lay. And I mean, the camera doesn't necessarily pick up everything, but once you see the whole thing done, you'll be able to actually look over the model. I'll put some pictures up, of course, on Instagram and on Facebook, so you can have a look at the current process, or current progress I should say, once we're finished tonight. This is literally, we're just going to grab a couple of highlights just to show that the vehicle is shiny in places and not quite so shiny in others. Righty ho, there we go. Anything at the front? Yeah, there's a few areas down there that we'll just grab. There we go, lovely, just like that. There we go. We'll just leave that at that. And I mean, if I have a look at that, I mean, you can kind of see that we've got some shiny areas, got some dull areas. Some of it's darker, some of it's a bit more brown than others, especially at the back there. You really can see it, and I will make sure I get a really nice picture of the back. If I get a really nice picture of the back there, you can see that some of it's shiny, some of it's not, some of it's brown, some of it's black, and you have really lots of different areas. It's almost, what I like about doing it this way is that you've almost got plenty to see even when there's nothing to see. You can kind of spend yourself a couple of minutes just looking at the different gradients and the different areas of colour, even though you're not really looking at anything of interest. It's just interesting to see that it's not all exactly the same, and I like that when you're looking at a model and you go, well, it's actually not, you know, it's all not identical, and therefore even on some of the more boring parts of the model, you know, you've got something to look at that's not, you know, it's not boring, because you've spent the time. And if you think about it, in the time that I've been live tonight, it's been what, a couple of hours, if that, 6:30 until, yeah, about an hour and a half or so, and we've done what we've done tonight, and it really doesn't take, I haven't really, you know, I've been talking the whole time. I stopped talking at one point to talk about the you enjoyed the plasma dry brushing for last week. Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant. Dry brushing is a fantastic technique, and it really can get itself a a bit of a reputation as being a cheating thing to do, or a noob thing to do, something that you can do, something that you do because you can't paint properly. You know what I mean? It can really get a bit of a reputation as being something that's cheating, or, you know, not that clever. But the way you look at it, when it comes to painting, everything is a technique that can be utilized in a way to add detail and depth, and it's picking the right tool for the right job. And doing this, what we've done today is we've picked out metallics. We've given it some rustic look. We've given it a bit of, it's almost rusty if you think about it, and I haven't even used any rust. You know, I've just used two different shades, and we could possibly add some rust to it later, but I don't know if I'll go that far with this particular model. But yeah, it's kind of using the right technique for the right part of the model, that overall gives you a good, you know, and it's just as simple as dry brushing. And the way I would say it is to people is that, you know, if it really is as simple as just washing and dry brushing, anybody can paint. You know, it's not difficult to paint. We're painting by numbers. All it takes is just a bit of experience using the right technique at the right model. If you can't edge highlight, that's fine. You'll get just as good a results by not edge highlighting sometimes than just dry brushing. And dry brushing is simple. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do now is I've got a slightly bigger dry brush, and I've got some Dawnstone, which is a medium grey. And what we're going to do is, hopefully, I'm actually going to get some paint onto the brush. There we go. Brush most of that off. So what we're going to do now is I want to try and catch some of the edges of the black. Now, I really don't think the camera is going to pick any of this up, because it's very, very grey. If it does, then brilliant. But essentially what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around all the edges of the black, just picking up the edges, and essentially we're highlighting. Like I said, I don't want to spend, you know, hours and hours and hours dry brushing this thing, because it will not, hours and hours and hours edge highlighting this thing, because that will not make for an interesting series of videos, especially if I spend, you know, an entire week's video edge highlighting the black. And then that means that the following week that you come back, I'll be spending hours and hours and hours edge highlighting a different colour, and that would be boring. So we're just going to try and catch these edges. If you take your time and you get your angles right, you really will be able to catch those edges nicely, and it will look almost as if you've edge highlighted it and spent hours and hours and hours doing it. I mean, there are some ways, there are some reasons for actually spending time to edge highlighting, and there will be some later on. I'll be doing the wings. Wings do need, you can dry brush wings, but if you spend your time picking them out feather by feather, it really does make a difference, and I will be doing that with the wings on this model. And again, it just comes down to picking the right battles. All I'm doing at the minute is the bodywork of a dreadnought. It's dented, it's battered and bruised. I'll probably end up chipping a lot of the paint, or at least making it look like it's whoops. Tripod fell off. I keep punching it. Where was I before I did that? Yeah, the bodywork. All I'm doing at the minute is dry brushing the bodywork of the dreadnought, because a lot of it I might go around and I'll chip it, and it looks chipped and all sorts of damage. So I really don't want to be spending all my time edge highlighting it if I'm just going to essentially trash the paintwork. So I may as well just do it quickly and just edge highlight it. Whereas if there's a part of the model that does need to look nice, such as perhaps the gold that I will be doing, and the skulls, the things that you're actually going to be looking at and paying attention to, then those are the things that you need to spend your time painting. That being said, one of the great things to do with your dry brushing is once you finish your main dry brushing, and I'll do this before I sign off tonight. When you finish your main dry brushing, which is what I'm doing at the minute, I'll do an overall dry brush, and then I'll come in with a slightly lighter colour as well, just to highlight it up a bit higher. Then come in with a brush just to do like the corners, just to edge highlight the corners, just to really make them pop. And it's what I did. If you have a look, if you're interested and want to after the video, is if you have a look at the Deathcompany of the big 2K build that I did. It's essentially what I did is I'm doing what I'm doing now with the Deathcompany. I dry brushed the armour, both with this Dawnstone, and then I came in with Longbeard Grey, which I will again be doing with this. And then just before I carried on with the rest of the model, or was it? No, just after I finished the model, that was it. When I finished doing all the highlights and all the details and stuff with the model, I then came in with some Vallejo Wolf Grey, I think it was. Essentially it's Fenrisian Grey, I think, from GW. I just went in and just grabbed some of those really tight corners, and it just really finished them off after dry brushing and not spending any time at all with the armour, the black armour. Just came in and just finished off the highlights with a bit of a dry brush, with a bit of an edge highlight just on the corners where the sharp corners really were, and it just finished off what was essentially quite a rough highlighting job. It really didn't take any time at all. Especially considering I can do this while I'm talking as well. I'm not, when you're talking and trying to paint at the same time, sometimes you have to concentrate and stop talking and just concentrate on what you're doing. Whereas when you're doing this, you really don't have to concentrate. All you've got to worry about is making sure you've got the right angle, and that you haven't got too much paint on your brush. Other than that, it pretty much does itself for you. But you're right, you kind of get the hang of both. It does. There's a time and a place for everything. and with painting miniatures to the best of your ability, I think half the battle is picking your battles. You know, picking the right time and the right place to, you know, where are you going to spend your time. Oh, excuse me. And pick your battles. What's worth your time and what really isn't. And I came into painting. When I came into painting, I wanted to make sure that I did everything as complicated as possible. Do I use a special dry brush? Nope. I went down to the shop and I bought these. They're a couple of quid each. They're nice and soft to hold, because the only reason I do that is because you're quite vigorous with your dry brush. But the only thing is, you just want to make sure that your dry brush is flat. So it's one of the flat ones, and I've got, if I grab them, I've got different size dry brushes, and that's all they are. So there's nothing special about them. I don't have a special brush. What am I doing now? Longbeard Grey. So I've done the Dawnstone dry brush on the black, and now I'm just going to come in with Longbeard Grey. Again, another GW dry paint. One of the things about dry brushing though, when you're coming in with the highlight, is that the highlight is always quicker. You don't want to spend, and you want to make sure you're lighter. You don't hit it anywhere near as hard, and you basically just tickle the edge of the, as long as you've got paint on your brush, just tickle the edges with the paint, and you're just coming in nice and gently. Just tickle those, just tickle it, tickle, and you're not trying to highlight it anywhere near as much as you were just doing. You're just trying to just gradually, just gently touch those edges, and that'll do itself. Go for the larger areas. Go for the sharper corners. You know, you can just about catch some of those lighter corners, but the sharper corners are the better ones to go for. Just on there, just around the edge there, like that. Come across the toes. Like so. There's one at the back there that we'll grab. Like I said, if we don't make a small mistake, we could just come in with some chipping later and cover it up, because we're doing a vehicle. If you're doing infantry, it's a little bit different. You see, I've done the body much quicker than I did the first time round. We're just going to go for the harder corners here. Like so. Oh, excuse me. My throat's really starting to get bad now. So we'll just get to the end of this dry brushing, I think, and then we'll call it a night. Go. I just grab some of those corners, Just the really fine ones. You can see just how quickly it is once you've done. You spend your time doing a bit of a decent dry brush with your first highlight. But the second one is you can really just rush through it almost. Don't just rush it like you don't care what you're doing, but you can really just pick out the high details, the sharpest of the corners, the biggest of the bumps, whatever you want to call it. And you can really just wish through it just like that. Right, there we go. So what I'm going to do is, where's my glue stick? Well, me glue. Here we go. So what we're going to do is I'm going to end it there tonight. We're just going to pop the, if I just pop this on here, and then I pop the other one here, on there like so. There we go. We can put him there. That's what we got to tonight. So we've done, all the metallics are done. Well, the lead belcher are done, and that's been washed and dry brushed reasonably. I know that you disappeared halfway through doing that, so if you want to go back and watch how I did that, it really isn't that difficult. Just a couple of different washes, and we've done the black, and we've done some highlight and dry brushing on the black. Yes, there will definitely be some pictures on Instagram, so have a look at that shortly after the feed is done. Next week what we'll do is we'll just start picking out. Most of the main body work is done. Pretty much the rest of this model is going to be picking out details. We've got some wings to do, which will probably take a bit of time. We've got some gold, some skulls to do, and the claws. There really isn't a huge amount that this model actually needs, and then we will be doing the base at some point as well. There isn't a huge amount to do. There could be 2, 3, perhaps 4. No, I don't think there'll be 4 more videos on this. 2 or 3 perhaps, to get this model finished, but you will get to see them all. You will get better pictures on Instagram. I'll get them taken shortly, and you get a decent look at that. But other than that, I think I think that's reasonable finish for this stream today. I'm really happy with the way that's coming. So I mean, if you guys think that that's pretty good, then brilliant. Next week I will be back same time next week ish, 6:30 ish. Always ish, because I had some gremlins before I started. So thank you to Reese, who's no longer watching at the moment, for joining me, and Tim, as always, thank you for joining me as well and joining in the chat. I hope you do have a look at the rest of it, and you learn something. It's enjoyable. I like doing this actually, so I look forward to next week as well. Thank you for considering Patreon as well, Tim. If you want to have a look at that, the links will be in the description below, as well as if anybody watches this after it's gone out, links to all of my social media is down below. And also, if you want to throw a idea into the hat for what you want to see me do next, feel free in the comments, or if you want to send me a message on any of my social media as well. Alright, so you have a nice evening too, Tim, and yeah, I'll see you next week. Alright, so thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Ta-ra.